Hello, my name is Genevieve, and welcome to my little corner of YouTube called Genevieve is Reading, where it's just this 30 something nerd that wants to talk about books. That's it. That's all this is. Today, I have a video that is specifically about Book of the Month. In 2021, I decided to read all 60 of the main picks from Book of the Month. So, not the add ons, just the main picks. And this video, I just sit down and I go through by each month. I pick my favorite one from each month, and then I make a list and organize it in the order that I liked them the most. So you'll find out who the winner is. Now, this is one of the first videos I recorded for this channel on my own after doing this challenge. And so it's long, and I kind of go through every single book and kind of talk a little bit about it. I went as quickly as I possibly could, and I did all of this without keeping really any notes. So it's the first time I spent the whole year doing this thing. Didn't think I was going to make a YouTube video about it. I literally just did it to do it. And then after I did it, I was like, people asked me all these questions about it, and I was like, maybe I should make a video. So I'm a total noob. I don't know what I'm doing. This is like the first video I think on this channel. So I'm just going to say right up at the front, like, be kind, be kind to in the comment section, be kind to each other. It's not that serious. It's just not that serious. Like, I think if you're watching this, you love books as much as I do. And so let's focus on that bond. And I'm not an expert on anything. I'm an illustrator by trade. So I'm not even like, I don't even have an English degree. I barely speak English. So you're not coming here for deep critical theory or anything like that. We're here to have fun, and I read all kinds of stuff. So I hope you enjoy this. And if you do, please, of course, do the like and subscribe thing. I would love that. This channel's brand new, so share this video. And if you think somebody that you know would like it, and let's just see what this thing does. I don't know. Like, what are we doing in this life? I have no idea. Let's just have fun and read books and talk about it. So that's it. Enjoy, and yeah, bye. All right, so we have The Dating Plan, The Prophets, Outlawed, The Removed, and The Survivors. So romance, literary fiction, historical fiction, which I think you could also lump into literary fiction. I thought it was very literary. Contemporary fiction, which I'm starting to not understand what contemporary fiction is, especially based on calling The Removed contemporary fiction, but whatever. I felt like it was very literary. If anything, as literary as The Prophets, but I don't work at Book of the Month. I guess they have to be different, right? They have to be different. They have to pick a lane. So this is the lane they chose. That's what I'm going to, I'm not here to criticize. And then the mystery. This was my first Jane Harper. I'd never heard of her. She was apparently really popular. I learned that afterwards. But The Survivors really didn't do too much for me. I didn't mind reading about the mystery. I didn't mind being in the shoes of the main characters. I didn't mind the beach scene. This takes place like in a coastal Australian town. And I remember thinking like, oh, like I enjoy being here, but I'm not particularly invested in really anything that's going on in this book. And it kind of dragged in the middle for me too. It just really didn't do it for me. This is going to be hard. The Dating Plan was fine. I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. I'll be totally honest. I had a bit of a pet peeve around some of the kind of facts about San Francisco that I did some more research into and found that they were sort of, I don't know how to describe this, like kind of wiggling the truth a little bit, or wiggling reality. What's truth? It's fiction. It's literally a fictional romance novel. But I did find the spicy scenes to be perfectly acceptable. I found the relationship itself to be really cute. So like I was here for it, but I didn't like love it. I will say I was really happy with how many they had chosen that were early releases. The Prophets I read in 3 days. I consumed that book extremely quickly. So I'll be honest, looking at this it's really between The Prophets, Outlawed, and The Removed. And I would probably say The Prophets came out on top, only because Outlawed I also loved. I absolutely really enjoyed the main characters. I really enjoyed what Anna North was trying to do in telling a story with a very diverse cast of characters in a way that felt very real to me, and a slight sci-fi element to it. It says historical fiction, but there were like very what's the word I'm looking for? Like little references to things that were alternate history that I thought was fascinating and cool. I just wish it kind of would have done more of that. I would have been here for even more of that. It was a little subtle for me. Ultimately, I had a great time with all three of those books, though. The Removed is really heartbreaking, to be completely honest. But I also finished that one extremely quickly. So I really think, though, it's The Prophets that's going to take it. The Prophets is about a relationship between two men who both enslaved people. And it is a cruel and brutal story that is told in this. And yet at the same time, Robert Jones Jr., he wove other characters' perspectives, other timelines into, one other timeline in particular, into this story in a way that I thought was really poetic, and it had this grandness to it ultimately in the end. It left me feeling really, I really don't know how to describe it. For it being a really serious and violent at times and brutal book, I wasn't like so devastated that I couldn't watch it or couldn't read anything. Like, I don't know. It was at times really propulsive. His writing is really gorgeous. I believe that, yeah, this is his debut. It says right there on the thing. So yeah, of these five, I would say it's The Prophet. So let's write that one down. Next up, we have February. February was rough, I'll be honest. February was a rough month for Book of the Month for me. The only one, like, this is kind of actually an easy pick for me. Infinite Country was the best one for me. And again, I just want to say, like, this is just my opinion. Like, you know, who am I, right? I think you'll learn a little bit about me as I talk about what I read, but I started off being more of a literary fiction person in general. So it's not surprising to me that a literary fiction did it for me. But I also cut my teeth on like cozy mysteries and some Stephen King and read every single Babysitter's Club book. So like, you know, Honey Girl was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be, it's more of a midlife crisis novel than it is a romance. And I thought it would be more of a romance. And I also, this is like my one little beef with Honey Girl. So it's about this woman who gets married in sort of a blackout to a woman in Las Vegas. And she's kind of going through some turmoil. She's a scientist and she's thinking about, I can't remember actually. I didn't like go back and look at any of these. I'm actually remembering all of this just off of my head, which is really surprising me. So she isn't really sure what the next step in her career is going to be. And she's nervous about it because she's a woman of color in a really like white male dominated field. And, you know, so she's having these just fear. She's going through a lot. And so she winds up going and finding the woman that she married and spend some time with her. And it's sort of like a soul searching kind of story. So, which was great. But she goes to New York where her wife lives, and she just kind of stays at her apartment. And in classic New York fashion, like she's probably, 25, I think, 26 in this book. This woman has roommates, right? And multiple roommates. I think at least 3 from what I remember, because that's the kind of problem with this book is that like the tertiary characters, side characters were not as well developed as I would have liked. They were kind of these snarky, like little quippy sort of, but no real meat to their story at all. Nothing that kind of bolstered the action of the main story. And I also was shocked that she was able to stay there for a very long time and never was there a conversation about who's going to be paying rent. Never was there a conversation about like, maybe, you know, she's going to be here and maybe she should have a key. Like none of those things. I was like, if you live with all these other people and it's cramped, I don't know. It just, that seemed really wild to me. I was like, does this author remember what that was like? Or just maybe that's part of the kind of fantasy aspect of and they, you know, they did label this a contemporary fiction, not a romance. So it's really on me that I expected more romance. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't what I wanted it to be. The Four Winds is just fucking sad. Like it is just a sad ass book. Like, oh my God, it is just brutal. It is for not great reasons, in my opinion. This won the Bodhi for Book of the Month based on people who voted. This was not my Bodhi. I did not. It's not a bad book. I've read Kristen Hanna before. I'm very Kristen Hanna agnostic. She's a good writer. I love the way the kind of diversity and sort of her different characters, their attitudes. Not diversity in that they're different people. She writes about white people. Trust. She does. But this was interesting, intergenerational, lots of trauma, but I don't know. It just didn't strike the chord that I wanted it to, I guess. I prefer The Great Alone more. Girl A was fine. People, I think, this is like mislabeled as a suspense. It was not, to me, a suspense. And the end, I was like, did I really need that reveal? I don't know. The reveal was actually, I had to go back and read it, like, at least twice, because, like, wait, what happened? Like, oh, okay. Okay. Cool ending. It's really more about trauma. That's what I got out of Girl A. That book is about a woman whose mother has died and in prison, and she's bequeathed this house, and she goes around to each of her siblings to talk about the fate of this house, and in doing so has memories of what happened to her as a child. And it's clearly based on instances where children have been so severely abused. So if that is going to bum you out, there are depictions of children being restrained inside of their rooms, starved, malnourished, etc. And I don't know if there's actual physical harm. I think there is, but it's just really severe neglect. And it was a fine book. I don't know. I wasn't crowing over the moon about it. I wasn't mad that I read it though. And then Kinda Sly was actually quite good. That would be the only one that would rival Infinite Country for me in this. The thing I didn't love, so this is a multi-perspective book, was that it took a while to kind of connect the two different perspectives, and that connection itself didn't 100% make sense to me. And not that it was like completely nonsensical, but it just didn't resonate with me, I guess. I was like, did I need to be in this little boy's perspective? I could have stayed in Ruth's POV the whole time, but maybe it's because, like, I don't know, I'm a 30-something woman and would care to, think more about what another, I think she's in her 30s in this book too. I was more curious about what she's thinking and not like an 8-year-old, 9-year-old child. I was like trying to figure out why he was relevant to the story the whole time. But it's cool. But yeah, Infinite Country I thought was really gorgeous. I loved that I didn't really understand or expect what was going to happen, especially, so it's about a young woman who's trying to essentially get home back to the United States where she was born. Yes, she is a U.S. citizen. And her mother and siblings live there, and her father was deported back to, I'm going to fuck this up and be an idiot. I'm going to look like it, but I didn't look back at any of these, okay? So it's either Colombia or Ecuador, and I think it's Ecuador, and I feel really stupid and very white not knowing that. I'm sorry. I'll put the correct answer in post. But just the depictions of the environment that she traveled through on her journey to, like, get to the airport. She was trying to catch a flight, essentially. I don't know. I could not put this book down. I just was sort of enraptured with the POV on this one. And it's about migration. And I don't know. I was thinking a lot about Valeria Lucatelli when I was reading this. She wrote a book. Oh gosh, I'm totally going to mess up the name of this one. Tell Me How It Ends. And it's essentially her book is based off of the questions that they ask people seeking asylum into the United States. It made me think a lot about that book, reading Infinite Country, which is probably why I liked it so much. Like, it reminded me a lot of her writing, and some of the issues that came up in that book also come up in Infinite Country. I don't know. It's just really, really well done. And it's also very short. I don't think you need to have like this big long tome. Like Kristen Hanna, come on. Like, that motherfucker was like 500 pages long. Like, for no reason, in my opinion. Like, you could have like sliced out at least 150. But anyway, all right, we're moving on to March. March was way easier. But it's going to be harder for me to figure out. It's interesting. the easier that the books were to get through, the harder it's going to be for me to pick a favorite. So I'm going to say that all of these were really interesting to some point. I did not love What's Mine and Yours. I will say, like, that was kind of at the bottom of this for me. I just didn't connect with the multi POVs. I just never got there. That's basically the long and the short of it with that. Too Good to Be True was perfectly acceptable thriller fiction. It didn't piss me off, which some of these thrillers really do. Oh, and we'll get to those. I have one of those on this list. It was pretty predictable, and which is not a bad thing. Sometimes I like a night like this would be a great palate cleanser, like in between a book hangover or something like that. I would like Too Good to Be True is excellent for that. In a book club far away, I was very emotionally attached to. I am from a military town, and so I loved that each of these characters were either in the military or married to somebody who was active duty, and kind of goes into those stories. I think those are important stories that more people should talk about, especially in a contemporary setting, and especially how diverse each of the characters were in their sort of POV. I don't know. I really enjoyed this book. It's not like, again, the most amazing book I ever read, but it really, it's very light. I think it's described in some circles as book club fiction, which I was like, I don't know what that means. But it's about these women and their relationships and navigating those relationships. Like, that's kind of like right up my alley. And there is a character that is the daughter of one of the main characters who is named Genevieve. And I was like, that's really cute. I meet a lot of younger Genevieves, and she's not real, but she's one of them. Last Apothecary was actually pretty, I didn't mind it. I didn't dislike that one either too much. Again, it didn't blow my mind. I was kind of surprised it was a Bodhi finalist. It didn't seem to leave that much of an impression to me, but I'm apparently wrong. There wasn't enough fantasy in it, and I also don't think I understand what historical fantasy means. What does historical fantasy mean? Like, it's based on real history but has fantasy in it? Question mark. Where's the delineation with that? I don't know. I'm very confused by that. I liked the twist at the end of Lost Apothecary. I didn't see it coming, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's about all I have to say about The Lost Apothecary. It's also short. Like, the shorter some of these like books are, in many ways, the better. Rarely does a book need to be over 330 pages, and I think Lost Apothecary like barely cleared 300. So I'm gonna say Opal and Nev is my top for this for March of 2021. I did not like Daisy Jones. I was like the only person I know who just really did not care for that book. I found it kind of corny. I thought I don't really care for a lot of behind the music style sort of stories. They don't really interest me. History interests me. Hearing an oral history is very interesting to me. But there's just something about the 70s that the way that some people portray it, it just seems kind of inauthentic, frankly, and a little, I don't know, just I didn't care for it. But the final revival of Opal and Nev was really well made and really made you, or at least made me, care a lot about these characters, especially. So it makes me think of like if Daisy Jones in the Six was combined with the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is really weird that because like Donnie Walton wrote this book, but Taylor Jenkins Reid is the author I keep thinking of when I think of Opal and Nev. I say that because the main character is an editor who winds up writing this book about her father, who was a drummer in the band, but who is killed. And she goes and talks to Opal and Nev about it, and things happen. And I loved the ending. I loved how kind of open-ended the ending was, and felt realistic, but also felt satisfying at the same time. It just made sense. I don't know. I really actually did enjoy this book now that I think about it. There were times when I really did not like either Opal or Nev. And I love that. I love when a book introduces me to people that I can think are amazing, but also terrible at the same time, or make really crappy decisions I don't like. So yeah, definitely I'm going to say Opal and Nev. See, the list is getting long, y'all. This is pretty This is like a scrap piece of paper. I have other writing on the other side of this too. Need to save some space. All right, on to April. This is a really good month and a really bad month at the same time. Okay, so I was looking forward to People We Meet on Vacation. I had just read Beach Read at the beginning of, at the end of 2020. And so I was like really down for a new Emily Henry. And this one satisfied me. It was like when you're really craving French fries and you get French fries. It's like exactly what you want, and they're crispy and they're salty, and maybe they even have like the perfect topping on it, whatever you can think of as like the perfect snack. Like that is what People We Meet on Vacation is. But her books also have a lot of heart, which I love. And she's a defender of her genre, which I also really love. So great. But it was not the best book I read that month. Liberty was not what I expected. Also not the best book I read that month. Liberty, I don't know what I thought Liberty was going to be. I didn't expect it to be more of a mother-daughter story. I thought it was going to be more of a historical fiction in the sense that I would see more about antebellum Brooklyn, which is a place I don't know much about. That time period, I feel like people mostly talk about the South, and Reconstruction era specifically is what I'm referring to. So Reconstruction era Brooklyn, I wanted to know more about that. And we didn't really get a sense of that with this. It was really more about Liberty and her mother, and then her relationship with her husband, and it's not bad, but it just didn't really do it for me. It's a very quiet book. I did actually really like how Liberty was such a complicated woman. Like she did things that I was like, I don't know about that. Why? And then she made mistakes and she regretted them and tried to change things. I don't know. I did like her character, but the story itself was just maybe a little too quiet for me, a little too internal at times. What Comes After? Absolutely gorgeous book. Gorgeous book that I did not want to put down. Another very quiet book. It's really just about grief. I love that the very beginning, it's about a terrible crime where one boy another, and then so trigger warning for those things, but you don't see any of that. I mean, it is just, that's not true. You do see it. I'm sorry, I lied. Later on in the book, it goes into what happened and plays everything out. But there's no question, there's no mystery to this. It's really a book about grief. It's about the father of the boy who died and the mother who's neighbors with the mother of the boy who was the murderer. And there's a young woman who comes to town and she's pregnant, and she kind of gets thrown into the mix there. And man, I can't wait to read something else that Joanne Tompkins writes. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Was it the best one though? Because here's the thing about me. I love me a cozy mystery, and Arsenic and Adobo is so sweet, is so adorable. I don't know. It's exactly what I want from that genre, right? And she has more of these coming out. I'm really excited about them. That's going to be really tough. All right, let's just shit on The Hunting Wives in the meantime while I perseverate on that. So The Hunting Wives was terrible. I did not like it at all. It was extremely basic. It was not particularly well executed in my opinion. And it also it does this thing that like Lifetime movies did back in the 90s, where it paints bisexuals as sexual predators, like unintentionally, but it did. So much about this book was just obnoxious. I remember talking about this with other people, and there's a character in this that is just walking plot. Like it exists for no other reason than to be a plot device. It's just so obvious. I thought it was. I was actually looking forward to this book when I read the description of it. I was like, cool. It's gonna be fun and maybe even a little campy. Maybe whatever. No, it was. This is where I learned that I could skim a little bit on some of these. That one very much in particular. I was like, I don't want to be reading this. The whole first 50 pages, I have to watch somebody doom scroll on Facebook. Like, no, absolutely not. No, the last thing I want to do is watch somebody in a book use social media and be as miserable as I am when I'm using social media. Like, I don't want that at all. No. 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 So yeah, I'm going to say What Comes After, just because I don't know, that I can't stop thinking about that book. Even now, months later, I still think about What Comes After. And what's great about Arsenic and Adobo is that I have even more to look forward to. But that's really close. That's probably the closest we've gotten so far. So let's see. What Comes After is the winner of April. That was really hard. It was very difficult. This will not be that difficult of a month. So May. Okay, it's interesting because I'm looking at these and I finished a lot of these May books in July. I had a really hard time with this month for some reason. And I don't think it's the book's fault, honestly. I think it's also just where I was at with work and sort of having other stuff going on. And what I assumed these books were going to be. And then kind of hearing what other people had to say about them, and was like, oh, okay, maybe I will actually prioritize this one before this one, etc. So Ariadne, I loved Circe. The comparison was to Circe. Circe was far better. Ariadne isn't bad. It's just boring. I just was bored a lot, I'll be honest. I didn't know the myth that this was based on. I mean, that's not true. I knew who Ariadne was, and I knew about the Minotaur and her helping and all of that. But then that all happened like really early on in the book, and I was like, all right, so what do we got here? And what I got was, I didn't love it. I just didn't love it. And by the end, I was like, okay, it's a tragedy. Got it. I don't even, like, I'll be honest, the very, very, very end of it, I don't even remember at this point. Like, I've kind of divested my brain of that information, so. Then we'll go to Things We Lost in the Water. Also not a successful read for me. I didn't dislike this book, actually. I think a lot of people didn't pick it up or didn't read it, and I saw some sort of mixed reviews on it. I actually love reading perspectives of people that immigrated a variety of different times in history, and this was a great book specifically about a family moving they left Vietnam during the Vietnam War and sort of setting up in the United States and sort of that whole journey, which that part I did actually really like. It was later on in the very end, the youngest son, there's this element of discord between him and one other character that I feel like if I said it would be a spoiler, that I honestly just didn't 100% understand, and I felt that it was underdeveloped. Instead, we focus more on him coming out as a gay man, which I thought was cool. This book was just kind of uneven to me. It was like weirdly paced, and had really great little scenes inside of it that I cherished, but ultimately, oh man, in the end, it's really, really cool. I mean, it sounds weird to say cool because it takes place during Katrina and it's actually like intense, but I guess what I mean is that the action of that part of the novel was really gripping, and I didn't want to finish that. Like, once we got to that point, I was like, oh, amazing. And then we had a little bit at the very, very end that I was like, what was that about? I don't really understand. He didn't stick the landing for me. So it was kind of an uneven book. But there's just little scenes or specific parts of that book that really stick out to me when I think about them. Specifically the car that they buy, who they buy it from, that relationship, or going out into New Orleans, the mother character going out into New Orleans with her friends, and I don't know, these little things that I just was like, oh wow, I don't know. I'll never forget those moments and the kind of pictures that were painted in my head about that book. But ultimately I was like, ugh, wasn't very successful. That leaves How Lucky, The Last Thing He Told Me, and Imposter Syndrome. So this is going to be a tie. Well, it's not a real tie, but it's going to be down to How Lucky and The Last Thing He Told Me. Imposter Syndrome, I actually really, really liked. It was not at all what I expected. I guess it was supposed to be, or the way the book flap kind of painted it, I thought it was more like corporate espionage, like, ooh, is this thing going to happen? Is this person going to find out? Da, da, da. It really wasn't like that at all. It was really more just two different people's perspectives on one side of on different sides of a problem, which I did not mind. I remember finishing this book and being like, cool, I actually really enjoyed that, and then saw most people didn't, and I was like, oh, okay, well, because I liked the characters. I really enjoyed the Russian spy, as well as the low-level programmer on the other side of the issue or the conflict in this book. I also don't love reading about Silicon Valley in general. It's not like something I completely refuse to read about, but a lot of times it's like the same story. And I think around the same time I had an arc for Startup Wife. And that also is the same area of the world, and a lot of the same things kind of come up. And I actually kind of prefer the Startup Wife more, even though I apparently couldn't remember the title. So there you go. So yeah, How Lucky, the last thing he told me. Shit, this is really hard. I don't feel like I'm going to make a good decision either way, because both of them were so good. Both of them were really, really good. The last thing he told me I read in one day, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved the relationship between the main character and the stepdaughter, them trying to figure out what was going on. So her husband, the father of her stepdaughter, was the company that he belongs to, the company that he works for, was raided by the FBI, and like a stash of cash and a note make it to her that just says like, take care of her, right? So she's like, okay, I have to take care of my stepdaughter now, and their relationship is kind of contentious, and the whole thing was just really cool, and I wanted to know what happened, and the ending was extremely satisfying, and yet at the same time really, really bittersweet, and I really enjoyed that one. How Lucky, I feel like I just learned a lot from the main character, and it was equally thrilling. I'm gonna have to go with the last thing he told me, though. I read both of those in a single day. And I feel like How Lucky is just so different. Okay, I'm gonna go with How Lucky. Just because it's so unique. I mean, it's really a coin toss at that point, and I just think How Lucky is so good. Yeah, that was really hard. I don't know if my reasons make any sense, but here we are. It's my little video. I can do whatever I want. All right. Wow, this is a really, really difficult month to decide. All right, so this is June. And again, I read most of these in July. I basically had all of May, all of June, and all of July I read in July. And then I was really worried I wasn't actually going to finish. It was rough. It was like everything was compressing. It just got really intense. So Instructions for Dancing by Nicole Yoon. I love her books anyway, so I'm already kind of biased. But this one really blew me away. I got to, at first, the first 60%, I was like, okay, cool. There's a fun little fantasy element in it, but it doesn't feel too ridiculous or anything like that. It's just like a sweet little romance. Then I got to 60% in, and I could not put this book down. I finished it in the middle of the night, lying next to my sweetie, and just weeping about this book. It touched something in me that I cannot explain. It made me think a lot about time and how little we have of it, and the nature of relationships, the nature of love, like the commitment that we have to one another, and what it means to be brave in the face of that commitment, and how difficult that can be at times, and what it means to be vulnerable. It's a young adult romance. Like, what? I don't understand it, but here we are. Instructions for Dancing. I fell in love with it. Sky Falling. I read that in a day. I read that. That was I like to do this thing where I read a book on a flight. I just like to finish the whole thing while we're flying. And this was the first time I'd flown since COVID, which was really interesting. And I could not stop laughing at this book. I lost my mind reading this. It's so out and out funny, and yet at the same time emotional, and I don't know, it really packed a punch for me. I love that it takes place in Philadelphia. I absolutely loved the main character and how bawdy she is, and yet at the same time vulnerable, like clearly protecting something inside of herself. I don't know. I know that some people had issues with this. They thought that some of it just didn't hit for other people. I could not stop reading this. I would read lines in this book and then look over at my sweetie and like be like, read this, it's so funny, look at this. And it's just like, okay. I don't know. I love a book that has a main character that is in her 40s, who's still discovering things about herself, and love a book about relationships, like in our relationships to our family, to our loved ones, our chosen family, all of that. That just hit on all of that. Yeah, I just adored it. It's like the kind of, it's almost rom-com-y to me, but it's not rom-com-y, but it had rom-com-y elements, but also kind of really packed a punch for me. All right. So Half Sick of Shadows, absolutely loved. Didn't expect what was going to happen in this book. I was not looking forward to Half Sick of Shadows. I really put that one off. I think I read this in late July, like after, reading literally everything else. It was like, this is the only thing you have left and you have to just do it. And then I couldn't put it down, and I loved it. There's interesting surprises in it. I don't know why I was so resistant to reading it. I think I just was kind of burned on Ariadne and was like, I don't know if I'm in the mood for another fucking retelling. I just don't know if I can handle it right now in my life. But I did, and I did not regret it. It is long, and the timey-wimey stuff is a little confusing. I think this would be hard to listen to. I read it, and I think it would be weird because the time bits are rough. That's kind of the nature of the main character. So the main character, she's out of the Arthurian legend, which I didn't know anything about. I don't know shit about King Arthur. I know that he exists as a concept. I know that King Arthur exists as a concept. I know that there's a sword and a stone. I know that Guinevere exists because people constantly call me Guinevere instead of Genevieve. Very aware of her. I know that there was an affair. That's really all I know. I don't watch any of those movies. I don't really follow any of that shit. So I was like, okay. So I didn't need to know a lot of that. Apparently they kind of catch you up, and the author, Laura Sebastian, changes the myth. She adds her own spin to it, which from the research that I then did on the Arthurian legend seems to be something that was really common with Arthurian legend. Like different regions in Europe would have their own version of the story of King Arthur and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it almost had a little bit of like a Buffy vibe to it, or like a Witcher vibe to it at moments where I was like, oh, that's kind of unexpected. Interesting. So yeah, it's about, I don't remember the main character's name because I'm terrible with that, but she has visions, and so she knows what's going to happen, and it's basically about her and her relationship with King Arthur and Guinevere and everybody. Oh my gosh, what was she does see Merlin, but also Morgana. That was it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I don't know. I was really, really surprised by it. I actually really enjoyed it. And I would reread this book, honestly, again, just to, now that I know all of the mysteries and there's no surprises, I'd like to kind of go back and see what I can discover from it. I really enjoyed Guinevere's character a lot. She just was really interesting. The Maidens I Hated. I don't really like this author. I was really bummed to see that it was one of the main picks. I was really annoyed. So yeah, I just kind of got through it and didn't enjoy it and really hated the end. So that's about my entire journey with the Maidens. I just thought The Silent Patient was like, it's unethical and it's bad. It's just bad. It's not good. I don't like it. It's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. It just doesn't do what I think it should do. It wasn't, and The Maidens I thought was actually borderline boring. Oh, that bad ending. That ending. I was like, what is this? Anyway, Malibu Rising. I think I read that in like 1 or 2 days. I could not put that one down. This is going to be hard. Yeah, I have no idea which to pick. I love that, like, Malibu Rising, there's like this big debate about whether or not it's historical fiction, and I'm like, it takes place in the 80s, which was a while ago. Like, I was born in the 80s, like, I get it, it was a while ago. We can all accept it now. We need like this cultural shift to happen for us to just like, but yeah, it was really good Taylor Jenkins read. Nothing is going to compare to Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, so while I loved it, it's not going to be the best one. Oh, man. Okay, this is really a tie for me at this point between Instructions for Dancing and Sky Falling. And I would say that Instructions for Dancing surprised me most. So I'm going to go with Instructions for Dancing. Instructions for dancing. Cool. All right. Moving right along. Okay. So we are the Brennans, 56 Days, The People We Keep, Razorblade Tears, Sisters in Arms. Sisters in Arms, for me, was what I expect from historical fiction. I love a book about two women and the evolution of their relationship. It's not like one I'm going to think about forever, but I enjoyed my time with it. And especially for a World War II book, I'm sort of over those, but I don't know. I got down with this one. It was cool. I don't know. Is that what people say anymore? I enjoyed my time with it. I keep saying that though. It worked for me. There we go. It really worked for me. We Are the Brennans surprised me. I expected to not like it. This is when I went in with preconceived thoughts of like, ugh, I'm Irish family drama. What is it really going to be? It actually was pretty cool, and the ending surprised me. I really enjoyed each of the characters, each of their different perspectives, each of the things that they were struggling with, how they were coping with each of those problems in their lives. And I thought that for a debut, I thought Tracy Lank did a really good job, and I would honestly read anything else that she wrote. 56 Days introduced me to Catherine Ryan Howard, who I think I'm going to really, really read a lot more of in 2022. I think I'm going to go into her backlist and check out some of her other stuff. 56 Days was very creative. It kind of does that locked mystery thing, and it does it within COVID, which for some people, they talked about how they couldn't read a COVID book. It didn't really bother me. I actually kind of wanted to see what other people were doing when we were all in lockdown. And so it was kind of this nice window into what was happening in a different country and in a murder investigation during that. So, but it's not like I'm a lover of mystery. I don't know why calls itself a thriller. This felt more of a mystery to me, but whatever. I would say ultimately that was not the best thing I read, but I did really enjoy my time with it. And I just feel like Catherine Ryan Howard, she's twisty without being too twisty. She's not like Alice Feeney, who Alice Feeney is too much for me. I've read 2 of her books and they just confound me. We're going to get to Alice Feeney, okay, because she's on this freaking list. The People We Keep surprised the absolute shit out of me and moved me. And I'll be honest, I loved Razorblade Tears. Really, really was surprised that Razorblade Tears was chosen for Book of the Month, because it's like very action-packed and at times gruesome book. Oh, I did really enjoy Razorblade Tears a lot. I'm going to say The People We Keep, though, is the top book of this month, because quiet story, big emotions. I mean, that's basically it. I loved reading about the 90s. I was a kid in the 90s, so I have a very particular perspective of what it was like living then. And so seeing someone who was older than me going through what she was going through, all without cell phones and a support system. It just was watching her survive, and the people that she met, the people that she kept. I don't know. It was an incredibly moving story. I couldn't put it down. So yeah, People We Keep. Gotta write this down. I'm turning the paper now. Okay. Definitely. I get really into reading books that take place in the 90s now. I'm really into 90s books because I recognize things, but I don't have much understanding of how it worked, right? I started 1990, I turned 5, and I ended the 90s turning 15. So I was like a kid, for the 90s. Year 2000, right? Yeah. I'm 10 years, math. I'm in it. I can do it. I don't know. For me, my more formative years, it'll be interesting actually in probably 10 more years to see what kind of fiction is written about the 2000s. And to speak about an earlier book, that's kind of what I liked about The Kindest Lie is, that took place in, I think, 2008. It was kind of neat to see somebody that was, in their 30s, and what it was like for them at that time. I don't know. I'm into that kind of POV. That's why I read, is to learn other POVs. So, This month. This is going to be an interesting month to discuss. Okay, so people liked Once There Were Wolves, and I think that you should love the things you love and like the things you like. This book was absurd to me, especially the end of it. I was like, what the is going on in this? You had me until really the absolute very end, which I would spoil it if I talked about, so I'm not going to do that. I did not care for that. I also found the plot to be a little convoluted at times. It's like, what is happening at any given point? It was just hard to like focus on for me. I maybe it was just the time that I was dealing with this book. I don't know, but it just really didn't do it for me. I remember I was reading this book while I was waiting to go get a COVID test, and I had to drive like all the way out of town. Like it was just, that day was kind of weird. Anyway, yeah, I just didn't really feel this one at all. There are cool aspects to it. So the sisters are Australian, and they are in Scotland with, one is a scientist studying wolves, and they're releasing them back into the Scottish landscape, which was fascinating to me. That part I was super there for. But then there's this whole plot line with like their father, who's an Canadian, and their mother, who's an Australian detective. I was like, you didn't need either of those characters in this book. The father character, you could have like had your little memories with him, but like, wow, there was a lot of him and a lot of the like mentioning of the mom that just felt unnecessary. I don't know. I didn't care for it. Whatever. Damnation Spring, I really did not care for either, which sucks because I love cli-fi fiction. Like I love fiction. I literally said climate fiction. I love cli-fi. I really enjoy reading books about the environment and people struggling within it. I read a book this year that it was not a book of the month pick, that was a lot about climate change that I actually really, really enjoyed. Damnation Spring was not that book. Oof. I wanted to like it. It had like 4 endings. Man, I was just not, I could not. There was a lot of logging jargon. It was a pacing issue for me. It was a pacing issue. I was like, I don't really understand why this part is so important. Is this going to pay off later? It's not? Okay, great. Cool. Awesome. This ending, the third ending of the 4 endings, I didn't need. You know, it's just like, what is the point of this? I don't understand the point that is trying to be made here. Did not care for it. So it's really down to the Shari Lapena, the Helen Hoang, and the Cordova book. Wow. It's also late. Oh my goodness. It's like late for me, I should say. It's late for this person. I'm going to go with The Heart Principle, and this is why. The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina was really cool. I loved reading this book. I enjoyed Cordova's writing a lot. I liked really everything about it toe to tip. It did have Alice Hoffman vibes for me in a way that really worked. The magical realism that's sort of woven into this contemporary story, and strong characters that all have very different POVs that struggle with things that I want to watch them figure out. Like, all of that was fantastic. I'm almost convincing myself to change my mind by talking about it, but ultimately The Heart Principle was just solid. It was just a solid romance, and it actually went above and beyond, because Helen Hoang always has a neuroatypical character in her books, and in this case, it did not fail as a romance at all. Like, she had her spicy moments, etc., and if anything, it was almost realistic the way that this book played, that the plot played out. The very end, there's a lot of the main character coping with a lot of issues that didn't just get tied up nicely, and I appreciated that about the ending. I thought that, like, she did a really good job just confronting the reality that her main character was going through. The main character is diagnosed as being on the spectrum at the beginning of the book, and while she's having this relationship with Quan, who we know from Kiss Quotient, and we do get some visiting characters from the other books in classic romance fashion, and that romance was important and interesting and wonderful. I really did care a lot about this main character and the things that she was struggling with. And I love that the book didn't just say, okay, well, and now she got into therapy and everything's better, or jump ahead 5 years and everything's cool. It was like things were really hard. And yeah, I don't know. I learned a lot. I learned about autistic burnout in this, which is something I didn't know much about. And I don't know. Yeah, that's definitely the one. Not a happy family. Perfectly serviceable. Didn't mind it. Not a whole lot to talk about for me, really. So yeah, let's see. The Heart Principle. And I like that these are all very different. I'm like looking at this. I'm like, they're all very different books that are, oof. This is going to be a hard month to pick a favorite. I'll be honest. September was rough with a capital R. Okay. The Neighbor's Secret, unfortunately, is very forgettable. I mean, I remember the plot, but there was just like a lot going on. And I was like, okay. All right. A lot of time jumping, a lot of like, no, it was this person. No, it was that person. And I was like, okay. And it dragged at times too. The most interesting part was, I think the main character, or one of the main characters, her name was Jenny, I believe. Her and her son, and dealing with her son's behavioral issues. That was the most interesting part. That's about it. Rock, paper, scissors, I did not like. I get that people love Alice Feeney. I get that she can do no wrong for some people. I get that people love their twists. This book was absurd to me, and especially watching the main characters just continually make bad horror movie level decisions. Like, as a horror movie lover, like, I felt honestly very much like Neve Campbell in Scream, where I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like, run up the stairs, you know? And then it just was, oh my lord. Yeah, I really did not care for that one. I don't mind unlikable characters. These characters were just pathetic to me. All of them. Every single one. Did not care at all about these characters. So yeah, the end was whatever, and I was like, okay, great. Moving on. The Sweetest Remedy, I actually really, really enjoyed. So I read The Ties That Tether at the beginning of 2021 and was saying to myself, I was chapter 43 of that book in particular, I was like, oh, Jane Caro can really write a chapter if she really wants to. She can really kind of push it and go there emotionally if she really wants to. Or she can do the kind of safe romance, which that sounds very rude. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, she could kind of stay inside the box, or she could really push it and make this kind of like Heart Principle, where it kind of goes beyond the expected tropes and happily ever after, which I'm not dissing on those at all, but it is cool to see people take that and kind of push it further. I thought she really did this with The Sweetest Remedy. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really well done. And emotionally, like, just really talking about the main character's emotions of learning who her father was, meeting his family, you know, wanting to pursue this relationship with this new person, but also seeing how complicated that was going to be, being in Nigeria for the first time, meeting people, all of that. Fantastic. Really, really enjoyed that. Thought she did a great job. Beautiful Country, I didn't mind. You know, it's a really hard book to critique because it's literally somebody's life story. So, like, I didn't connect with your life story. I didn't like it. Like, that feels very uncomfortable to me. I will say I wanted to know more. So the book ends basically when the main character's in middle school, and I would have loved to have seen what happened after that, and how she got to where she is today. And we don't really get that. But at the same time, it was a really important story. I'm glad I read it. The Love Hypothesis, I actually liked a lot, but it got points knocked off in my mind. This is a me problem, honestly. When I found out that it was like Star Wars related or so, and I was like, what? So now all I could think of is Adam Driver. And I'm like, I don't want to be thinking about Adam Driver. I am one of those people that wants to make up the characters in my head. I don't like, and I get that people really enjoy doing the celebrity casting and stuff like that, and I think that's great. Do that to your heart's content. I don't. And so I really didn't enjoy, I mean, even the main, like the picture on the cover, it looks like the Star Wars people. And I was like, I don't want to read about a Star War. And it's not about a Star War, but I couldn't stop thinking about Adam Driver the whole time. And I was like, Adam Driver is a real human being, is a real man that lives on this earth. And the main character's name is Adam. I don't know. I just felt uncomfortable with that. And I'm not dissing fan fiction, believe me, not dissing fan fiction at all. But for me reading it, not knowing that that's what it was and being signed up for something I didn't understand what it was, I was like, what the f-? Like, I didn't. So I'm going to say Sweetest Remedy. I think it's pretty obvious, honestly. We're going to have to go to the other side. That was a rough month, though, I'll be honest. Like, these were, I mean, none of these made my top 10. Like, even The Sweetest Remedy was really good, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. It didn't crack my top 10, like, at all. All right, sock commercial. All right, we're gonna breeze through these because easy Lincoln Highway. Easy Lincoln Highway. The Perishing I could not follow. I also really couldn't follow Harlem Shuffle. I thought that Harlem Shuffle was going to be more of a heist book, and it didn't seem like that. I really, don't even ask me what the plot of Harlem Shuffle is, I'll be honest. I started it 3 times, and 3 different times, and I was like, about halfway through, I was like, I don't even think I really understand what I'm reading. I'm not following the story at all. Yeah, I don't get it. And The Perishing, I really struggled with too. I don't really know what, well, it's because it's like 2 timelines, and the one timeline I was like, what? Huh? What? I think that there was a lot of really cool things that were being said in The Perishing. I just think the metaphor didn't work for me. That being said, it's a really powerful book, so I don't want to just say like, oh, it's so crappy. I just couldn't get there with it. I really did not care for the X-Hex at all. Really did not care for the X-Hex in the least. And I feel bad because I actually am a fan of that author, but I just didn't, I never got there. I just never got settled into that book and never cared about any of these characters. I couldn't get it going. Everything We Didn't Say surprised me. That one really surprised me. I expected it to be pretty basic. I saw Podcast and I was like, is this going to be like Night Swim from last year? I don't know. I actually really, really enjoyed it. Everything We Didn't Say super worked for me. I got sucked into the mystery. I got sucked into the memories of Iowa. I've driven through Iowa a couple times and stopped in a few different places and kind of fell in love with the brutal landscape. And it was in the fall. So I don't know. I was kind of here for it. Weirdly enough, even though it doesn't like evolve the genre by any means, it doesn't need to, right? But Lincoln Highway was gorgeous. Lincoln Highway surprised me. I really didn't know what to expect, but I fell in love with Amor Towles' writing all over again. I like most of his books. I really didn't care for The Rules of Civility. I thought that was the most boring fucking book I've ever read. Whereas Lincoln Highway, I jumped in immediately. I was invested in each of these characters. I was overwhelmed with like why the main character was even in prison to begin with, and following his brother Billy, who just wants to like catch up, and amazing. So Lincoln Highway is about 2 brothers who are on a sort of road trip. They are intending to go one place and they wind up having to go another. And en route to New York City, they jump boxcars, and the one brother goes to find food, and the little boy is left by himself. And that whole scene, it really messed with me. Really, I was like, I had to put the book down. I couldn't. I was so freaked out and had to come back to it. It was just extremely difficult. But once it all resolved itself, I was like back on for the ride, here for it. And just, I love that Amor Towles does this thing with each of his characters where you don't just meet them and then they go away. Like you get to learn a little bit about their backstory, a little bit about who they are, why they are. And even he played out the stories of some of his characters a little bit. These little side characters that would never see much, screen time or page time. And he just goes the extra mile to spend a little bit of time with them and really transition them on their way, on their journey. And the end was absolutely devastating. I was shocked. And man, one of the best books I read this year, absolutely. But I didn't put it on one of my, interesting. Moving on. So that was the winner there. All right. Now we're getting into the last 2 months. So interesting. Okay. Hands down, The Keeper of Night is the winner of this. Absolutely, hands down. I really, really enjoyed The Collective and The Family. I actually enjoyed The Family more than I thought I would. I was really worried it was going to, especially with the font looking like the Godfather cover. It was like, really worried about it being too... and I know that the actual book, Mario Puzo's book, is not... it doesn't necessarily glorify crime, but it is more about family. But the fact that that font is there, it was like, is that going to feed into people's expectations about it being more of this glorifying the mob story, intentionally or not? It really is very much more about these two women, their growing relationship, them growing apart, coming back together. I loved that. I loved just watching these two women grow and sort of how they navigate knowing one another over an extended period of time, and how their families communicate with one another. They're each born into families that are connected to organized crime, and it is explicit about how dangerous that has been and what the price that has been paid for that activity. So I thought that was actually pretty cool, but it wasn't the best thing I read. But I did really, really enjoy it. It was a debut. There's 3 debuts this month. I'd be really curious to read more from this author. The Collective was just a thrill ride. I really enjoyed it. I read it. I read that one in a day. I think I might have read a couple pages the night before, or whatever, and then jumped into it the next day and just screamed right through it. It was just fun and kind of absurd. This idea of a string of mothers, middle-aged women predominantly, getting onto the dark web and communicating with one another about how to seek revenge against people that have wronged them. There's just so much that's great about that. Don't worry too much about the plot holes. Just don't worry about it. Just let it go. Let it be what it is, A Little Hope was totally fine. It's a very quiet book. It does actually kind of strike a punch at the very end. Not a big one, but it ends nice and succinctly. And it's a great book that has lots of little vignettes in it that are interesting and beautiful and quiet and make you reflect on family and what's most important, right, in our lives. At the same time, this book suffered a little bit from perfect lady syndrome, manic pixie dream girl. Yeah, there's a character, I think her name is Georgia, who was just way too good to be true. And I was like, what? She's just not that particularly complicated. I don't know. I wasn't really buying what she was selling, but, and I really loved, oh gosh, I'm sorry. I completely forgot his name. I know I need to write all of the characters down if I'm going to talk about each of these books, but there's a character that is suffering with substance abuse and depression in this, and I thought that his story in particular was actually really well handled. The stories of grief in this book I thought were really beautiful. So there's a lot in that book I actually really did enjoy and connected with and found meaningful, but ultimately Keeper of Night is the best book of this month. I could not put that book down. I just had life things coming up when I was reading that book. It was actually right before Thanksgiving, and I screamed through it. I actually wound up buying an autographed copy of this book as well, so I have 2 copies of it now. I cannot wait for the sequel. It is gory. It is about family. It is about finding yourself and connecting with your identity and your heritage and understanding what that means. It is about being disappointed by discovering those things. There's guilt, there's fear, there's just epic, awesome, rad, gory battles. Oh, I just loved this book. I wrote a just like crowing gorgeous like love note on Instagram to the author in the comments of like one of her pictures. She's like, oh my God, this wild human being is, you know, flipping out in the comments. That was me. That was absolutely me. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the second book. It's going to be in October, I believe, this year. So yeah, that one wins hands down. Keeper of Night. Notice I haven't said much about How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. This book just wasn't for me. I'm glad that it was picked. And I think that a lot of people will say, oh, why? Nobody liked it. I don't think that's true. I think that there are definitely going to be some people that did like this book. A non-vocal, you know, segment of people that subscribe to Book of the Month will like this book. I wanted to like it more. I really did. I actually went into this with pretty high hopes. I love that the protagonist was 40, but still kind of a mess. I loved that. She was also a little delusional. The problem with this book for me, it utilizes a lot of tropes I don't care for. And that's what romance is about. Like, you find the tropes that you like and you kind of run with it. But I thought the idea behind it was really cute. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's fine. Things don't always have to make tons of sense. But yeah, I just was not vibing with How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. I do hope that there are people that have found it and loved it and enjoyed it. And because, you know, not every book is for every person, but the people that are for, it's very good that it exists. So that's how I feel about that. All right. And then finally, December. December was a good month. At this point, I was really done with the cutesy holiday, well, not necessarily holiday, but just cutesy romances in general. I was feeling real burned out on the romances. Love Hypothesis, Keanu Reeves, I was like, oh man, not into this. But Holiday Swap was fine. It really is a Hallmark movie inside of a book. Like, that is what that is. That is all that it is. It doesn't need to be anything else. Not for me. I'm realizing that the romances that I like, as I'm going through this, because I kept thinking, I was like, well, I liked romances this year. There were romances I cared about. There were romances I connected with. Yeah, they were all ones that had more than just the romance, and also had a little bit of spice in them. I noticed this too, that if it's just, and actually this happened in this one, in Holiday Swap, it's all just fade to black. I'm like, I get that there's a place for that. I get that there are some readers who don't want spice in their books for a variety of reasons. But there is something weird to me about reading what is supposed to be a romance between two people who have sexual attraction, who want to have sex with each other, right? So we're not talking about asexual people, right? We're talking about two characters that want to engage in sexual intercourse with one another. And then we don't see any of that. Like, it's just, I don't know. But they're adults. It's too cutesy. It's too high school. It's like, just, I don't really get that. That's, again, my personal preference, right? I'm like, can I just get a little bit of steam? Just like a little bit of steam. Like a tiny little bit of steam. I get that people want to kind of preserve this like weird innocent, fine, whatever. Do you? This book is for you. Holiday Swap is your book. You're going to really love Holiday Swap. Me, however, just was like, I'm so glad it's over. I think I forced myself to read that in a couple days. I like sat down on a Sunday and was like, I'm finishing this goddamn book. I'm not sticking with this anymore. I really had that like weekend where I was like, we're getting this out of the way. So I can get on with the rest of them. A History of Wild Places started off so strong for me. It almost gave me, When the Stars Go Dark vibes. It is not When the Stars Go Dark. That's a better book, a better mystery, a more interesting mystery. A History of Wild Places is sort of hung together with this really thin idea that I'm not saying is not totally impossible, and I'm not saying it needs to be possible. It just, first of all, didn't enjoy all of the POVs in it, didn't need all of them. There's 3, and I was like, okay, we could have had 2 or even one. Like all the information that we get, we could have gotten from one person. We didn't need to have all three of these POVs. It does this thing that like a lot of thrillers and mysteries are doing and have been doing for a while now, where they have to have these tiny chapters, and we build tension by, not solving the issue that's in front of us, but just switching over to another character's perspective. So, we delay the inevitable. And I just find that I can see it on the page. I can see it happening, and it fucking annoys me. Like, I just don't like it. So ultimately, this was not my jam. But then at the end, I was like, Genevieve, you're being really harsh. Relax, it's fine. It's not that bad. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It's fine. Read When the Stars Go Dark if you like a more literary mystery, I think. It's not even that literary. It's just a better mystery. And it takes place in the same general region of the United States. And I cared way more about everything that was happening in that book. In fact, I would reread When the Stars Go Dark. I have no plans to do that with A History of Wild Places. Somebody's Daughter, really, really, really well-written book. I just enjoyed reading this book because of how it was constructed. The author is just a great fucking writer. So I wasn't really, and again, this is somebody's memoir. This is literally about somebody's life. So it's really hard to say like, oh, I didn't like your story of your life, I did like the story though. So there's that. It's just hard to critique something that's someone's lived experience. I thought she did an incredible job talking about her relationship with her family members, and just existing in her body, and the memories that she had, just were so vivid and intense. And, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're really lucky to have this book to read, frankly, in so many ways. Again, a lot because of the fact that she is such a experienced, like such a talented writer. Can you tell that it's like late and that I'm getting tired, and I keep jumping around? This is like my first video jitters. But yeah, I don't know if I would recommend Somebody's Daughter to everybody. I think the premise was that we were going to learn more about her relationship with her father, and that's in there, but it's not as much in there as I thought. And I also feel that learning about why her father was in prison, like we didn't get to see her do the emotional work to kind of find her closure around it. That being said, how dare I ask to see that, right? Like, that's messed up. So I'm not saying that like, oh, this book isn't good because I didn't get to see, your trauma on the page. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I guess the initial premise, you think that it's going to be more about that, and it's really not. It's really more about her life and her relationship to herself, to her family, becoming the person that she is, her relationships, how her life was shaped, and how the things that happened to her in her life affect her relationships with other people, her romantic relationships. And it's just written really fucking well. So I'll be reading anything else that Ashley C. Ford wants to write, because damn, she's a good writer. Roxane Gay actually left a really glowing review for this, and is Ashley's mentor, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm a big Roxane Gay fan, so I thought that was just kind of neat. But my favorite book of this month was not Somebody's Daughter. It was also not A Flicker in the Dark, which you just need to do more than whatever this was. This was a valiant effort into the mystery thriller genre, but nothing that I'm going to think about beyond the time that I spent with it, frankly, and talking about it here. It was perfectly acceptable. I didn't hate it. I did get to want to skim it at one point, and it's pretty figure outable. What I did really like about it was the where it's located. The setting of the book in Louisiana was brought to life in a really cool way. It had almost a Sharp Objects feel to it in that regard. But I would have rather just read Sharp Objects again, to be totally honest. Even though that takes place in Missouri. Yes, Missouri. And this takes place in Louisiana. Just this kind of punishing heat, this swampy vibe. I don't know. I enjoyed the environment, but everything else I was kind of like, sorry. And also there was like a lack of consequences around certain behaviors in this that I thought was kind of interesting. But whatever. It just sort of wrapped up at the end. I was like, okay. So no, the book of this month for me was Olga Dies Dreaming. Olga Dies Dreaming was perfect. What an just stellar, gripping, phenomenal debut. I just get kind of like shakes thinking about that book. I thought a lot about a friend of mine actually who grew up in Brooklyn as well. So Olga Dies Dreaming is about a woman who's from Sunset Park. My friend was from Fort Greene. And I kept thinking about things that my friend had told me about her own childhood. And she is half Puerto Rican, and she told me once about knowing her history to carry her history, because no one else would do it, right? And learning about PR about Puerto Rico from her, going into this made me appreciate this book that much more and just hold it so close to my heart. This is a love letter to Puerto Rico, to the Puerto Rican diaspora, and it was also just really well written. The end of the first chapter just slaps you in the face, bang, into the next one, and I found it very propulsive. And at first I was very nervous because it seemed like it had a lot going on, and it does have a lot going on. However, I don't know. I just wanted to be in this world, and I wanted to follow Olga. I wanted to follow her brother. I wanted to see kind of what road we were being led down here, where all of these paths were going to take us. And along the way, she's able to really, Gonzalez is able to, I think, say a lot of things that need to be heard about Puerto Rico. It's interesting because I remember talking to people over the years about and hearing people say like, oh, well, Puerto Rico should just be a state. And I was like, well, I don't know if everybody feels that way. And not everybody does. So, and this book kind of goes into that. And I don't know. I feel like we don't talk enough about what's happening in Puerto Rico, especially considering that it is U.S. territory. I remember once on a Book of the Month swap and sell page, there was a woman who was living there and said that somebody refused to mail to her because she said she wasn't going to mail anything to a foreign country, and then blocked the woman. And I was like, what? So yeah, I really hope more people read this book. I feel like they're not. I don't know. This was on the cover of Time magazine, so I hope a lot of people do. But I just think, like, of the Book of the Month people that I know, I hope that everybody at least tries to read this. I know that it's a little long, but I feel like every page is used wisely, frankly. Man, and the end of it is so emotional. I loved this book. I actually passed it along to somebody else that I was like, you have to read this, and that I think is a really glowing recommendation. So, all right. So that's Olga Dies Dreaming. And I'm going to now drink this water, and then we're going to pick the best one. Wow. All right. So my top 12 are The Prophets, Infinite Country, Final Revival of Opal and Nev, What Comes After, How Lucky, Instructions for Dancing, The People We Keep, The Heart Principle, The Sweetest Remedy, The Lincoln Highway, Keeper of Night, and Olga Dies Dreaming. That's a great list. I will say that I don't think any of these wound up on my top 10 of the year. So this is where I'm going to go into a couple things. First of all, I hear a lot about people feeling that Book of the Month has gotten bad, or they're not as interested as they were before, or, oh, this month is terrible. I think that's really subjective. I mean, I think that could be totally true for a lot of people, and I'm not invalidating that feeling of like, I'm not connecting with these books. Like, nobody's here to make you connect with anything you don't want to connect with. I think I've been a member since July of 2016. And yeah, wow, it's been a while. So I'm going on oh my gosh, I'm going on 6 years. Jeez. I'm going on 6 years of being a Book of the Month subscriber. And I just don't ever want to give it up. I have to say that I find that over time, I've picked more books than I have picked less. I've been interested in more of their offerings than in the past. In the first couple years that I joined, I really only picked one a month, and that was it. And, and then they started to expand. They started focusing on a lot of like early releases, which I thought was really cool, and on things I either hadn't heard of or just seemed, I don't know, kind of out of my comfort zone. So I've never really been that disappointed. Even a book, I think there's only one book that I've gotten from Book of the Month that I really, really, really didn't like. And that was Topics of Conversation, which I sold. So it's no big deal. When sold it on the, swap sell pages, it's gone. And I don't know. I find that maybe it's just because I am very curious about books and I tend to like to try new things, that I'm always intrigued, and I've only become more and more intrigued, especially joining the different book groups and Bookstagram and all of that. You get to kind of hear what people like about things, etc., and it's just kind of gets you amped up for it, I guess. So, for me, having been a member for as long as I have, I think it's only gotten better over time. But I will say that doesn't mean that I have gotten the best books that I've read that year from Book of the Month. And I think that's okay. For what I want, for my purposes, I'm okay with that. I love being able to make recommendations based off of how much I've read. And I feel like I've read so diversely this year, across genre, specifically, that I feel like I can at least say how I felt about something, and hopefully somebody's able to say, oh, well, if I like that kind of thing, I'm down for that. If I don't, maybe not. And that's sort of my goal with talking about a book. Not so much that I expect somebody to like the thing I like, but I do expect to hopefully connect and get excited about kind of books and reading in general and celebrate that, right? So I think that's important to be said. The other thing I want to talk about is how I did this. So I could not have done this without audiobooks, just because some of these books are really challenging to sit down and read for me, with my eyes. And that has everything to do with me having a job and having other things going on in my life. And also, like, I've been listening to audiobooks since I was very young. So I don't see it as any different than reading a book with my eyeballs. It's not cheating. I would never say that somebody who is blind or low vision, like, hasn't read the same book as me, right? Some of these I would not have finished without audio. Oof, yeah. I, in some ways, kind of prefer audio for being able to immerse myself into the story a little bit more, depending on it. But yeah, I'm thinking of a few books in particular that, but I got these from my library. I got them from Scribd, so it wasn't like I had to necessarily pay extra. I was able to find these pretty easily, honestly, without having to buy them through Book of the Month. That being said, I did get most of them through Book of the Month, and I wound up having to offload them as well because it took up a lot of space. And so I would say if somebody's considering doing something like this, I would not buy all of them through Book of the Month. I would not, unless that's what you really want to do and you really want to collect it, like, go for it. But I was told early by Sarah, who also did this, audiobooks are your friend. And I was like, oh, girl, I already know that audiobooks are my friend, so no worries there. I also, this is just a me thing too. For some reason, where some people will say, oh, I'm a mood reader, like I have to be in a certain mood for a book. I am a moody about the format that I read a book in. I don't understand it. So, like, a good example is Lincoln Highway. I actually pre-ordered that on Kindle before I knew it was going to be a Book of the Month, and I forgot to cancel my pre-order after I found out that it was a Book of the Month. And I forgot even after I ordered it through Book of the Month. So anyway, point is, their pub date comes and I have Lincoln Highway in my Kindle, and I was like, oh shit. And I actually preferred reading it on my e-reader than reading it in my book. I did go back to my book to kind of like mark some pages and stuff like that, but I preferred that book on my e-reader. I don't really understand what that's about. I feel like I can just read faster on my e-reader. I'm not really that page conscious. I can just sort of keep going and just really immerse myself in the book and not worry about holding it. I think also because I use my hands for a living, like I draw for a living, so there is a little bit of like stiffness that I get, especially like in my right wrist. And so like holding a book, especially in bed, it's like not always the most comfortable thing in the world, especially a big chonker like Lincoln Highway. So my e-reader is so light. It's just like, sitting there zooming into it. So yeah. And then there are some that I just really wanted to have and purchased on audio that I got through Libro specifically. So The Prophets, I actually wound up purchasing a second copy. I gave away my Book of the Month copy and I bought a signed edition of that. I did the same thing for Keeper of Night. I would love to do that for Olga Dies Dreaming. I would love to get a signed copy of that book. It's so good. Same thing with Instructions for Dancing. So yeah, I would say if you want to do this, I didn't even decide until probably like February. Yeah, that I was going to do this. So I didn't even decide to do this early on. It wasn't like I was like, December 30th, I'm doing it next year. I saw that someone had done it the previous year and I was like, I wonder if I could do that. I bet I could. And I just did. And I just got them in any format that made sense to me and I read them at my leisure. It was hard though. There were times when I really, really didn't want to finish. Like Hunting Wives was really tough. How to Marry Keanu in 90 Days, rough. What's Mine and Yours? It was rough in the middle of that book too. There were times when I was reaching out to people and being like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Right? It's totally a hobby. And I'll be honest, I actually got something out of it. I got something out of reading a book. Normally I'm a big DNFer. I'm a big fan of DNFing books. But I actually found that specific to this challenge, I wanted to be able to read all of these books and say without a doubt which ones I would have liked and which ones I did not like. And I couldn't say that unless I'd completely finished it. Any other book that I had on my bookshelf this year, I absolutely DNF'd if I didn't want to finish it. I have no shame about that whatsoever. This is just more like a guideline that I made for myself. And I'm glad I did it because, there were definitely some books that saved themselves towards the middle. I will say though, for the most part, there's some books that I know pretty quickly they're not for me. Unfortunately, Harlem Shuffle was, in that case, I didn't want to not like it because I really like Colson Whitehead's writing. And yeah, that was just such a huge disappointment. So yeah, probably actually the biggest disappointment for me for the year was Harlem Shuffle for sure. That being said, we have these 12 here to look at and for me to decide which are the top and which are not. I kind of just want to like rank them and keep them in the 12. So, and I don't want to have recent bias play into this. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to avoid that. I didn't really put that much thought into this before I sat down and turned on this camera. So we're going to see what happens. Wow, this is really hard. I don't know if I can do this. The best one of all of these. Okay. So I will say that The Heart Principle is not, it can go kind of towards the bottom. Like Olga Dies Dreaming was definitely better than The Heart Principle for me, right? And that's not to say that like it's a bad book, right? Obviously it was like my top of that month. So How Lucky definitely is not going to win my top spot either, but I would say easily could come after Heart Principle. People We Keep, that one's staying up towards the top, I think Final Revival can go under that. I think a lot of things can go under that, to be totally honest. One that can't, however, is Keeper of Night and Olga Dies Dreaming. Maybe there is some recent bias happening there, but I can't, the heart wants what the heart wants. Let's see, Lincoln Highway. That was hard. Infinite Country and The Prophets are definitely not the top two. That looks good to me, I think. Although I actually think I liked Instructions for Dancing more than I liked Infinite Country. I'm going to put definitely Infinite Country above Final Revival. All right, I'm going to say Sweetest Remedy is going to be number 12. All right, now. Yeah, I think that's it. Keeper of Night was, from the jump, amazing. Just from the jump, action-packed. What's going on? Oh my gosh, like, she's getting into a fight with a High Reaper. Like, I'm in the world is being built around me so quickly, but so intensely, and just, yes, 1,000 times yes. Same thing with Lincoln Highway, except, like, it's in, what is it, Kansas, or, yeah, I want to say Kansas. I get Kansas and Nebraska confused a lot, and I'm really, really sorry about that. Like, when we just kind of talk loosely about those two states. I know that they're two different places. I've driven through Nebraska, so I know that it's different from Kansas, but just when we're talking about, you know, the two states, can't do it. So, oh, yeah. And Lincoln, see, here's the thing. I put the ones that surprise me the most up towards the top, and actually to that, I'm going to have to move Instructions for Dancing up, because that book really did surprise me. It really, really just bowled me over. Yeah, I would say that's a solid list. So the first half, all books that really got me in the gut, got me in the heart. Oh man, this stuff. Yeah. And I like that this is like a mixture of heavy and light reads, you know, some literary stuff, some kind of lighter fiction-y stuff. Pretty, yeah, I think it's pretty solid. So, thanks for joining me on this amazing journey. I didn't really know how to do this, so again, I just kind of jumped in and did it. So hopefully that worked and everybody's okay with it and you stuck around. I am going to edit this down, so it will definitely be shorter than the runtime of my current video, but regardless of how long this is, thank you so much for watching me talk about books. It really means the world, honestly. And I don't know. It's nice to connect with people. So hopefully, you got something out of it. Please ask me questions about these books if you want. Leave constructive comments if you feel the need. But for the most part, I just look forward to talking to people about what they're reading, what you liked, what you didn't like. I'm sure we'll have like extremely different tastes. Looking at this list, it really gets me thinking about what I kind of learned about myself. And again, genre doesn't really seem to matter to me. The concept of why, like, my top pick and my fourth top pick were both YA, right? I never would have thought that. I never thought that YA really spoke to me, being in my 30s, like just at a different stage of life. No, like, oof, I couldn't have been more wrong. And I was happy to be wrong, you know? I learned this year I don't mind romance. I learned this year what I like in a romance as opposed to what I don't like. I learned about my favorite genre, lit fic, not being a clear winner for me when when it's offered from Book of the Month. Not always the thing that I really want to be reading, which is really surprising to me, because I definitely had that old school attitude of being very like, oh, a book has to be a certain way in order for it to be considered good, and that's just such a lie. I also really like historical fiction, but I knew that about myself. I knew that I was a historical fiction person. I love, because I think there's so much to learn from history, and it's good stuff. Yeah. I think that if you want to do this, it's totally worth pushing yourself to do. It's not like the most challenging thing in the universe that you would just be so confused or upset with yourself that you did it. I think there's a really interesting conversation happening right now about, like, this is our hobby, and so we want it to be something fun. But I am kind of that person who likes to challenge myself even with things that don't matter. If anything, I actually prefer to do it with things that don't matter, because it's all about learning, pushing myself and learning from myself, and not comparing myself to other people. I think that's where we get into kind of negative territory, is when we're comparing ourselves to others. I'm not here to do that at all. And I think sometimes that might rub people the wrong way. I don't know why, but I just do my thing. So, and that's what I hope to continue to do with this channel. So this is like a nice introduction to what I'm hoping to do here. My goal for next year, first of all, I'm gonna DNF like crazy. Even though I did already do that this year, I felt like there were definitely more books this year that I really pushed myself to read further than I normally would have. For whatever reason, I just wanted to do that. So definitely going to DNF more. Definitely going to just go. I actually have a lot of books on my shelf, not this shelf. These are all books I've read already. My books that I have to read are actually upstairs in my bedroom in a built-in. And I have about 100 on that list, on those shelves that I would like to get through. And that doesn't mean I'm going to finish all of them. That means I'm going to pick them up and look through them. But every book that I do finish, I do want to put a review of up on here, that and on my Instagram, which is right here. So I hope that by doing this, that I can meet even more people that like books just as much as I do, and to connect with you about that and learn about what you've got going on. And once again, thanks, and thank you to Book of the Month for always having something for me to read, because yeah, I don't know. It's great. Not sponsored, but yeah, I really enjoy it. All right.